When a manager abandons his tactical philosophy and starts playing simple and basic football, it's often a sign that that manager is under pressure and his days in the club are numbered. And I think what we saw from Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid yesterday is a clear indication that Alonso is under pressure. We know how Alonso used to set up in Bayer Leverkusen. He's a manager that likes to hold the ball, that likes to be on the front foot. But going back to the structure he employed against Manchester City, it's indicating to me that Alonso is under pressure and there is something going on internally at the club. We'll talk about that later, but let's just look at what Alonso did tactically in this game that I felt was not his usual principle, but very basic football, closer to what Carlo Ancelotti would have done. Let's have a look. Now, I think the very first thing that caught my attention in this game was the way Alonso set up Madrid when they were not in possession. He tried basically to squeeze the middle of the pitch to make sure that City does not have any room to play out from the back. They did not go hunting for the ball. They did not go pressing City in their own half. This is an example. Now, City have taken a throw-in and they are well in control of the ball and then they are trying to build up. Now, what I want you to keep an eye on is watch this Madrid's 4-4-2 structure and see how close, how compact everybody are on the pitch. There is basically no gap in that center of the pitch. It's like Madrid are operating with 6 people in that center of the pitch. So Manchester City cannot even play out through the middle. But then there's something I want you to keep an eye on as regards something that City did in return to try to drag this disciplined Madrid line apart. Look at Doku here, and then look at Nico O'Reilly, who is supposed to be the left back. They have switched positions. Now, that constant rotation between O'Reilly and Doku was something that Guardiola employed to great effect in this game. Doku and O'Reilly down that left-hand side, both rotating, one person coming inside, the other one going wide, creating a lot of problems for Madrid. And I think it also created a lot of problem for Manchester City as well. We'll see that in a minute. Because what kept on happening was that O'Reilly is trying to find that gap between fullback and centre-back because of Madrid being so compact and narrow. But now, the implication of that is that once Madrid are able to win the ball deep in their own half, there is always this gap for Rodrigo to run into. And that gap exists because the left fullback there, O'Reilly, is usually high up the pitch. There was that gap to run into. This is what happened on this occasion. And then when there is that gap, there is always that switch from Vinicius Jr. or somebody down the other side, switching the ball into that gap for Rodrigo to run into. This is what happens in this case here. There is that gap and he just runs into it. And he was able to square that ball perfectly. It's unfortunate that Vinicius Jr. couldn't finish that chance. But that is not the only time. We will see this thing happen again. Again, this is Manchester City trying to build up. And you can see that squeeze again in the middle. Like Madrid literally have 6 players in the middle of that pitch, trying to squeeze, trying to make sure that they outnumber Man City there and Man City cannot progress the ball. And then on this occasion, you can see from Man City's perspective as well, you can see that switch between Doku and O'Reilly. This time, O'Reilly stays wide, Doku has gone central. Now, what Manchester City wants to do here is to drag that Madrid disciplined line apart. Very clever rotations. But the trouble with this is that as they are rotating players, even down the other side, once they lose the ball, there is always that gap out wide. And it is those gaps that they leave out wide that Madrid tried to exploit in this game. This time, it wasn't the O'Reilly gap that was exploited. This time, the gap was on the other part of the pitch. Again, because of rotations further down that pitch again. And then this time, Bellingham would have had a chance to run into that gap, but he didn't quite get in there. But let's see this happen again another time. Again, this is another Manchester City build-up. Now, what I want you to keep an eye on is how Madrid has in the middle of the pitch. Look at that squeeze and that compression of the midfield. You can almost not see any gap at all in midfield. Of course, they outnumbered Manchester City in the midfield. Where City had the gap in this game was out wide. And again, I'm just highlighting that switch between O'Reilly and Doku again. Now, Doku has gone inside on this occasion. O'Reilly stays wide. But notice something, that Doku picks up the ball in midfield, which he did a lot of times in this game. And then, if you notice, O'Reilly has gone central to try to find that gap between Madrid's fullback and centre-back again. On this occasion, though, I think Doku was supposed to go wide, but he opted not to. For a split second, I think he believed that he had a space for a pass, but he didn't. And then they have switched position again and gone out wide. Now, the effect of this rotation was that it helped to destabilize Madrid a little bit, in that when a team is rotating this effectively, you usually don't know who to pick up, or you usually don't know who you are picking up. And then you have players popping up in weird places to pick up the ball. Doku was an absolute menace throughout the game because he was popping up in places where you don't expect him to have, picking up the ball. And of course, he's a dribbler. He's one of the best dribblers in the Premier League. That was a problem. But the problem it also created for Manchester City was that whenever Madrid turned over possession, there was always that gap out wide. And I think I've highlighted that gap on 2 occasions. But see the goal that Manchester City eventually conceded. Again, Manchester City have been dispossessed deep in their own half. Now, because O'Reilly had gone central previously and Doku had gone wide, what you see here now is that O'Reilly is tracking back, but he's central already. And by him having that rotation with Doku, what it then means is that there's all this gap in front of him. And that is the gap that Rodrigo is attacking here. I've highlighted this before, but see how costly this was for Manchester City on this occasion now. They've identified that gap and duly rotated the ball out. There's that diagonal pass to him again, and he had that space to finish. Of course, on this occasion, O'Reilly was unfortunate. He couldn't close him down on time. I think this went on in this game for a few times, but still in that first half, though, I think Manchester City controlled possession. But from controlling the game tactically and achieving your aim tactically, I think Madrid were the better team in that half with what they did off the ball. They were unfortunate, I think, to eventually concede 2 goals from set piece. One of them was a corner kick, which I think they defended badly. And then the second one was a careless penalty that Rudiger gave away. It was unnecessary. And at the end of the day, they were 1-0 up in the first half. They were in control tactically. They were achieving their objectives. And then they had to go into the break being 2-1 down. I mean, it was a sad scoreline. And I don't think Madrid deserved to lose this game. But again, that is football. It happens. Xabi Alonso is in trouble. I think his days in Madrid are numbered. If he's not able to solve the internal crisis that he's facing in Madrid right now, I don't see him lasting till the end of the season. You could do well at Bayer Leverkusen, but Madrid is a different beast. Anyway, that's just my brief tactical intake from this game. I analyze football matches every week. Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City. If you enjoy tactical analysis like this, hit the follow button.